I have a brother, and when we first came to the United States, of course, we came as refugees, and and that was my status. I wasn't even a resident yet because you have to go through proper, you have to wait a time to be a resident, with a refugee status. You have to wait for a certain amount of time to actually apply for a green card and then a residence card. And then finally, by 1983, I applied for my citizenship, you know. And of course, I'm talking about the 60s and 70s. Today's things, the laws are probably changed a bit, and it's a quicker process, but not back then, you know. So I just wanted to make that clear, which meant that we had very limited funds.
Hmm.
My parents, and they are very loving and giving, and they wanted to actually have us while we transitioned from living in Cuba. And my family was middle class.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I am trying not to geek out here, be one of those fanboys, but I have one of my heroes here, and that is Rudy Sarzo. If you don't know who he is, shame on you, but he was with Quiet Riot, played with the great Ozzy Osbourne, even played with Whitesnake. How are you today, Mr. Sarzo?
I am blessed, and like you said a few minutes ago, blessed beyond words.
That's right. Where were you born and raised, and all that good stuff?
Was born in Cuba, raised in Cuba, and up until like I was almost 11. Then we moved to Miami, and then I was reborn in Los Angeles.
Part of that
actually,
LA.
actually, yeah, spiritually and of course career-wise,
I watch documentaries a lot, and I love history and things like that, which is one reason why I like talking to people like you. You always hear some kind of cool story about how, my uncle bought me a guitar, or, but let's take like Eddie Van Halen and his brother Alex. They had actually were playing different instruments, and then they switched, and, the rest is history. I mean, do you have like some cool story like that?
I have a brother, and when we first came to the United States, of course, we came as refugees, and and that was my status. I wasn't even a resident yet because you have to go through proper, you have to wait a time to be a resident, with a refugee status. You have to wait for a certain amount of time to actually apply for a green card and then a residence card. And then finally, by 1983, I applied for my citizenship, And of course, I'm talking about the 60s and 70s. Today's things, the laws are probably changed a bit, and it's a quicker process, but not back then. So I just wanted to make that clear, which meant that we had very limited funds. My parents, and they are very loving and giving, and they wanted to actually have us while we transitioned from living in Cuba. And my family was middle class, working class, and they really spoiled my brother and me as kids. And then when we came to the United States, we basically, more my brother than me, because I was almost 11, but my brother had just turned 6 or 7. It is 61, I think. Yes, 7 years old. Yeah, 7. And he was still going under the, there's the Santa Claus, and there's like the 3 wise men, which, being raised Catholic, that's when we get the gifts, January 6th. And he had to be told, listen, it's, there's no Santa Claus. He had 7. Me, I kind of had an idea by then, So, it was kind of like, it was tough. That first Christmas for my brother, especially, nothing. As a matter of fact, what we got for a toy was actually Mr. Potato Head, which is the perfect toy because you can play with it in the daytime, and at nighttime you can eat it.
That was back when they just had the little things that inserted in the potatoes.
Yes. And the next day you got another potato head to stick the little things on it. So that's a perfect for a for a person of limited means, for their kids. Perfect toy. Okay. And but I think now it's something about it got canceled. Mr. Potato Head is like a bad guy now. I haven't heard about
they
that.
didn't want to put a gender to it, which was, that was the first thought. They didn't want to put a gender to it. And then I think the Hasbro kind of backpedaled a little bit, and it's like, well, we got Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. So.
That's right. They do have that. It's part of the Toy Story plot. Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. Yeah. I wonder what Don Rickles would have to say about that, because he was in Toy Story the voice of Mr. Potato Head. To cancel Don Rickles, come on,
Yeah, the whole cancel culture is getting a little bit out of hand nowadays, but yeah.
Well, eventually they'll run out of things to cancel, so they'll cancel themselves. Yeah, that would be the last act of canceling.
I try to steer away from those kind of topics, but it's funny that you mentioned that, because there are people that have been part of that cancel culture that are finding themselves. They just said the one wrong thing and now they're being canceled. So it's getting absolutely ridiculous. But
it will. Oh well. I think we all have something to learn from that. So as long as we're learning, we're growing. Right.
And that's what we should do. We should learn more about each other and not, don't look too much into what people, that they're saying, because, if I ask you about, your culture or, things like that, I'm generally want to know. I'm not, so we should learn more about each other and quit trying to nitpick at every little thing people say, but,
Yep.
I want to kind of get back to your parents,
yes,
because I think this would be really good for our listeners. When they were in Cuba and decided to come to America, how much of a real effect and change was that for them to go from that way of living to over here?
Yeah. It wasn't just financial, it was cultural. It was, again, I'm talking 1961. It's a whole different landscape in the United States, less Latinos Latin demographic in the United States. And so, it's my perception is just based on my experience. And as time goes by, it has very little to do with the present, because as things change, my perception by somebody who has not experienced it might be a little bit might be not relative to the present. I even though assimilation and adaptation, especially if it's economic, is it's still a reality. But I think that there's, especially, and I'm talking about the Latin communities, the immigrant or refugee experience in the United States is, yes, it's tough, especially for immigration. My family waited, we had to wait over a year to go through the proper channels. I mean, I got my passport, I keep it, and my Cuban passport, with a visa, and we had to have somebody to claim us from the United States, and you have to get your airplane tickets and everything. So we came to the United States legally. We went through the process just like everybody else did. At that time, legal immigration. And this is 1961. We flew. This is in between Bay of Pigs and the missile crisis. The missile crisis is what triggered the embargo. And by triggering, that means is that there were nuclear missiles 90 miles away from the United States. So Kennedy decided to put an embargo on Cuba. It's something that really, it's, even though the Cuban government uses it as a propaganda tool, it really doesn't exist. And I'll explain to you why, as somebody who is Cuban, who actually understands and experience what the embargo is, what it means today. Now, when goods were manufactured in the United States, the embargo was effective back in 1961 because it kept goods manufactured in the United States going to Cuba.
Right.
If you walk into Walmart, how many made in the U.S. manufactured goods are you going to find?
Well, you should find quite a bit in a Walmart.
Yeah, but they all come from China.
Well, just get this, the tag just says made in America then.
Yeah. Or
Gotcha.
It might be design in America, but it's manufactured somewhere else.
I got you.
So what happens is, China being a communist country, Cuba being a communist country, who's going to keep China from selling products to Cuba? No, the only country that officially does not do commerce with Cuba is the United States. Every other country, they have built resorts, they have brought in products, but here's the problem. Since Cuba decides to be a Marxist-Leninist country, there's very little export production of goods. So what happens is there's no money. Most of the money that comes into Cuba comes from Cubans living in the United States that send money back to their relatives to help them. It's a huge business. Then they bring in goods when they go over to Cuba to visit them.
Right.
And so in reality, just the fact that you can buy your goods from the same place that the United States, buys them from, the whole meaning of the embargo as it was back in early 60s, I believe 62, 63, when the missile crisis happened. I believe it was, we were still in Miami and we moved to New Jersey in 63. So it's probably 63, 62, 63. That does not have the same effect. Now, this is what happens if and when the embargo in the United States is lifted. What happens is Cuba now becomes a favorite nation, which means that the United States will lend money to Cuba just like they do to every other nation that needs financing, especially in Central and South America. So it means, personally, that my money that gets taxed will go to my communist country of origin. This is where I was born. And that really doesn't sit very well with me. I'll be the first one to even go to Cuba the day that it's not communist anymore. I'll be the first one and lend a hand and help rebuild it. But as long as it's still a communist country, that to me, it means as much as sending money over to Korea.
Right.
Why would I want to do that? So that's what the embargo means to me.
So, no, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you and say, I usually don't get too political on here, but with the trends that seem to be going on here in America nowadays, a lot of people are wanting to go towards communism and socialism. Does that worry you that this might go that direction?
Well, I have a very simple answer. Why would you want to go to a system that where it originated in Russia,
Mm-hmm.
Karl Marx, and then followed by Lenin, who implemented it, and every other, it failed. It
That's
failed.
right.
It's a failed system. It doesn't work. Eventually would not work. And I've experienced this. I know what it's like to live under communism. You know,
Exactly.
so it's not a perspective based on Wikipedia or doing research or watching YouTube videos.
Right.
It's a perspective based on I lived it. I lived it. And so why would anybody want to do that? Because it's just like the way it grabs you is because it looks good on paper.
Mm-hmm.
It really
Exactly.
does. Once it's implemented, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Whereas the Constitution of the United States, God willing, it will remain at its foundation. Of course, you're going to have amendments to the Constitution
Of
because
course. Things change.
things change. But at the core of it, what it stands for, I am not worried about communism entering here as long as the Constitution is not destroyed.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems we have nowadays, it seems like people want to censor everyone, and they, like we were talking about, the whole cancel culture thing, and trying to drive people off of YouTube, and even going as far as trying to get even news channels off the air and things like that. I don't have to agree with someone to let them speak. I think that we should have different opinions. That's how you come to some kind of an agreement, meet in the middle, and it makes things better for each other. So even if I'm talking to somebody who's on the other side of the political fence that I am, I still want to have that conversation. Whereas it seems like people want to cut you off just because you're on this side of the fence or you're on the other side of the fence. It's like we're going backwards. You know what I mean? I hate getting off on that tangent, but I hate the fact that people they're like they're getting in tribes or something. If you don't agree with me, I don't want to have nothing to do with you anymore. And that's not the way it should be.
We're all different. I mean, it's when I say that, okay, I'm being general and it's a cliche. We're all different, but yeah, I mean, my fingerprint is original to me.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else has my fingerprint. Nobody else has your fingerprint. Nothing. We're all completely different, right?
That's right.
Why would I expect anybody else to have the same perspective that I have? It's impossible.
Exactly.
So I respect other people's perspectives, and when I say everybody, I have to go across the board. If they want to cancel me for respecting their perspective, there's nothing I can do about that because it's really out of my control.
Mm-hmm.
I have no other place to go to in this planet, and I sure not looking forward to going outside of this planet because I belong here. Any planet, even if I go to the moon, which is a moon, not a planet, I would have to wear a suit, a spacesuit. That means I don't belong there because I'm being shielded by the actual environment that I'm visiting, right?
Exactly.
So why, God did not create me to go to the moon. He created me to actually be on this planet, breathe this air, this oxygen that we have, be part. I am part of this world. We are part of this planet, just like the trees are and the animals and the birds and the insects, the fish, we belong here.
Mm-hmm.
And we have enough issues going on. And I'm not being political. I'm being like, It's a fact that there's been at least 15 cataclysms in the history of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
The planet keeps changing. Even the north keeps changing because it keeps tilting on the planet. That has a lot to do with the changes that we see, how we treat the environment. I think we should be more concerned about preparation of what to do when these changes happen, if we really want to look for surviving these changes that no matter what happened. I mean, we had an ice age before even men existed.
Exactly.
So we didn't cause the ice age. It just happens. Things happen to this planet as things happen in the whole solar system, in the universe, and the galaxies, and everything beyond. It's constant change, basically, is what it is. But I would put my energies more into saving humanity than it actually trying to get away from humanity to go to another planet.
Right. Well, I mean, like with my wife and I, we have a lot of similar interests, but we both like different things, and we've kind of introduced, say, like a new world to each other, and so now I've got new experiences, and I've gotten to go to new places and see all kinds of cool things, and we get great ideas, and just like the podcast that we're doing. I don't think if I had never met my wife, I don't think I'd ever be doing this.
Oh, wow.
And she had a very big part in this. And the different things that we've done, I don't think I would have ever done. And same thing for her. I've, like with music, I've introduced her to music she's never heard before. And if everybody was the same, this life would be boring. I don't want the same old. I like to have somebody that has, a different perspective on life, or, I don't want a carbon copy of me. That would be too boring. I already see myself in the mirror every morning as it is.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I've been married for we're going on 37 this year.
Wow.
And it's wonderful. I mean, when my wife and I, we go on a ride, she's usually driving and I'm holding the little dog in the back seat. And she points out certain things that I maybe miss from the back seat. What we're driving. Oh, look at that house, look at that tree, whatever, look at the ocean. And it's always good to be traveling with somebody in the same direction with a different perception.
That's a good way of putting it. I'm going to have to remember that. I'm stealing that from you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I love the fact that because you're with somebody, like you said, on that same path, but you have a different perspective, that, it's opened up a lot of new things to me. I wouldn't have met the people that I've met in my life if it hadn't been for my wife. I got to go to New York a couple of years ago. Had never been, and I probably wouldn't have if it hadn't been for her.
Yeah.
And I just think that we should allow each other to be different and not like pick a side. I don't think it should be as black and white as I'm drawing a line in the sand. You're either on this side or you're on this side. It's hurting us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have very different in my garden, different flowers, and they all allow each other to grow.
Exactly. So you do a show yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I have a radio show on Manchester Rock Radio. It's called 60 Degrees of Sarzo, and it's a half conversation, half music show.
Oh,
it's we have really, really interesting guests that we have something in common. I've had very few people that I've never met, but most of them are people that I've known, and I've met a lot of people, and I have a lot of friends. So I'm very, very blessed, And yeah, but what's interesting about sitting down with them, because since it's the conversation at Starbucks that we never had, just because just we didn't have the time, you know, and we get to really find out about each other. I even get to find out about myself because I found certain perceptions from the my guests, and I go, oh wow. So I look back at my own and go, oh, that's interesting. So I always learn something from every show that I do. And the reason why I started doing them, I started doing it as a podcast, was because through the years I've attended a few memorials, like for Lemmy and Ronnie James Dio and some other colleagues and bandmates that have passed away. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be really nice to have them, the people that have passed away, our friends, here to listen to this, to be present. So I started doing the podcast because I really wanted to document in their own words, verbal documentation of my friends and neighbors. I have a lot of really cool neighbors, in the industry too. So I did that as a podcast, and then I got the call from the CEO
Oh, wow.
for streaming. Yeah, so that's cool.
I've asked that we kind of, just want to learn more about you. So what was the first bass you ever owned?
Oh, just like any musician starting out, because there's always that doubt, especially from your parents. And I don't blame them. Is this a whim? Is he going to keep this up? Plus we were poor, and so anything that my parents would buy for my brother or me had to be shared by my brother and me, because there were not two guitars in the house. There was one guitar, there was one bicycle, one pair of roller skates, and we just shared it, because there was not enough money to go around to buy individual, presents and stuff. And so the family guitar is what I call it.
Right.
My family guitar. The first one was it wasn't even a bass yet. It was a guitar. It was an old Craftsman from Sears catalog.
Oh my God. Yes, I remember those.
Yeah. Yeah. And it came in the mail. Of course, there was no FedEx, no UPS back then. It came literally in the mail in a big box. And that was our guitar. Of course, we didn't have money for lessons. So it was kind of like banging my head against the wall, watching in the TV, musicians playing. What is he doing? What is he doing with his fingers, with his hands? So I spent a lot of time doing that, getting really close to the black and white TV. And so that was the first one. And then when I decided to play it, well, it was decided for me, basically. My family moved back from New Jersey down to Miami again. Actually, in the same block. We were living in this building, and then when we came back, we lived in the building next door. So that was basically exactly the same, spot on the GPS, And when we arrived, we got settled. I went over to my block. Each block had a band, and you cannot join the block across the street. You have to join the band in your block. There were rules. And so I walk in with my old Craftsman guitar, and I go, yeah, I just moved in and I want to play with you guys. And they go, we got too many guitar players. If you want to join the band, you must play bass. I go, what's that? I go, bass. They go, bass. It's like playing a guitar solo through the whole song. I go, that's for me. That was it. Because what happened was, since I couldn't get lessons with chords, I didn't know that many chords. So I wasn't really inclined to play rhythm. I was inclined to pick up melodies, and God knows what kind of tuning I was using, because we didn't have these little tuners that we have now that you can clip on your guitar and tune. it was like it took me about 3 years to find somebody who was kind enough to show me how to tune using harmonics on the strings, And I go like, oh, okay. So that was like discovering fire for me. But now I can cook and stay warm. It was just like that. And so yes, so it once I decided, you know what? I like this. I like this whole thing about the bass, because what I did is I just removed the high E and B string from the guitar, and I was playing like bass sort of on this big flat, zebra striped old Craftsman acoustic guitar, and so it was kind of like faking it. I had never laid hands on a Fender bass or a Hofner or a Gibson. All I knew is like I got this guitar and this is my reference, and I hear things on the radio. I'm gonna try to make the same notes and keep up with everybody else.
Well, the 80s, I got into drinking and drugs and all that kind of stuff. I did get away from the drugs for a long time, but the drinking got bad. Yeah, I guess I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I really got into cocaine. At age 36, I had a heart attack. It made me rethink things. So I gave all that kind of stuff up. I'm a lot happier for it. So maybe I've got a little bit left.
Yeah,
but,
I was. I became. Well, I stopped drinking. About 23 years ago, over 23 years ago. And what I was cautious about saying is about being sober. I am sober. I just recently joined the program, and I found it to be a completely different experience, just being an individual that quit drinking and now being an individual that is a member of AA. It's a very different experience. I mean, it's because a lot of the pieces were missing. A lot of the like fellowship, certain understanding, certain listening to people tell me their stories, sharing them, and we do it on Zoom now. So
wow.
It's something that it's part of my daily life. It centers me. So my experience being that just being not stop drinking was just the beginning of it. Was just the very beginning of it. Finding out about having an alcoholic mind, that was a revelation, because I did not understand certain things about why I thought the way I did.
Yeah.
Why I made certain decisions, and to me, my life, and I got to tell you, one of the things, one of the steps in the program is about surrendering your life to God, to a greater power. I did that 40 years ago to the date, right here today, over around this time 40 years ago, and I got to tell you, I had the hardest time for 23 years of not drinking, being sober, still trying to find my way to the level of spirituality that I had when I surrendered to a higher power 40 years ago. And as soon as I became a member of AA, I got the clarity. I found the tools to get me back on that path again. So it's really changed my mind. So I congratulate you on your sobriety.
Oh,
really
same
do.
to you. Same to you.
And I gotta tell you, it's before I really got into the program, there was a certain stigma about the program. And I gotta tell you, now that I know so much about it, and as far as I know what the changes it made in my life, the significant changes. And I got to tell you, I'm just proud to be part of the program, because now I have the clarity that I did not have.
Well, back then it was like the thing to do, to be part of the crowd, you had to party, and that was
of course.
that lifestyle. And they don't tell you when you're getting into having all that fun that later on it takes over your life.
And, but one thing that I embrace is living today. And there's this neuroscientist, his name is Joe Dispenza, that I watch his videos on YouTube, and I've learned a lot from him, so much. I really gained from his teachings. And one of the things is, that he teaches is to live in the moment. Do not repeat the past. And I've done that so many times, trying to like get it right, getting it right, because I did something in the past that I could have done a little bit different. But no, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. No matter how you change it, it's going to have the same outcome,
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So in order to actually create from the unknown your future, you must let go. Do not repeat the past. Do not follow the same pattern, the same perception, the same thoughts,
Exactly. Well, you know what, man, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you have an appointment coming up.
Yes, so, I do. Yes, sir.
We're going to cut it short right here. Do you have anything you want to promote, whether it be a website or your show or anything? Feel free to mention it.
No, I just want to promote love.
Hey, there you go.
Love and, appreciation and being grateful. And thank you for everybody that's going to be listening. Thank you to you for having me on your podcast.
Oh, man, believe me, the pleasure is all mine. When you answered me, I was on cloud 9. I can't tell you how much this means to me, because like I say, you're one of my heroes. I didn't geek out too bad, did I?
No, did I? I think I did.
Well, you kind of swooned a little bit when I got on there, but
that's right.
No, I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of our audience. Without you, I just wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Tune in again, because we're going to have some more exciting guests coming on soon. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Kyle. God bless you.
Same to you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network